While the primary focus of the Pokemon series is capturing and battling the titular Pokemon, the games also tend to feature a minigame or two that break away from the main gameplay. One example is the Game Corner, where the player can participate in everyone's favorite child-friendly activity, gambling. Possible ethical concerns aside, the Game Corner has actually had a pretty interesting history throughout the series, so I thought it might be worth taking some time to take a look at the complete history of Pokemon's Game Corner. Starting with the original Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and also FireRed and LeafGreen, when the player reaches Celadon City, they gain access to the Rocket Game Corner. As you might expect, this place is run by Team Rocket, and even houses a hideout for Team Rocket beneath it. But getting back to the topic at hand, the first iteration of the Game Corner is a fairly basic one. It just features slot machines. According to a page on the Glitch City wiki, these slot machines are actually pretty in-depth, between the game being able to randomly pick a machine that's luckier than the others, to the machines having different modes each spin, and even the reels being able to advance a couple of positions after you hit the A button to stop them, allowing the game to try and rig the results. YouTube channel Crystal also has a video talking in detail about how the Gen 1 slots work. I'm gonna leave a link to both the Glitch City wiki page and the video in the description. Check them out if you want to read further into how these slot machines work. Other than the level of depth they have to try and screw you over, however, there's nothing particularly special about these slot machines, no kind of bonus game or anything that we'll be seeing in later generations. Another interesting thing about the slots in these games that I didn't realize until I started making this video, the icons are different looking between the different versions of Gen 1. Some icons are just different Pokemon, but even something like the 7 icon has an altered look to it, depending on which version you're playing, which I don't really get the point of, but I guess that makes for a neat bit of trivia. Of course, in order to play the slots, you need coins. You can either buy them from the Game Corner for prices that can only be described as extravagant, or you can pick some up off the floor. This image from Bulbapedia showing off all the spaces that have hidden coins on the ground. I think this is actually the only generation that has hidden coins on the ground, along with FireRed and LeafGreen, of course. Now, if you manage to walk away from the slots a winner, or just buy a bunch of coins, you can head next door to redeem said coins for prizes. The right window has TMs for Dragon Rage, Hyper Beam, and Substitute respectively, but the left and middle windows have Pokemon. The big one here is Porygon, who requires a measly 9,999 coins to get in Red and FireRed, but only needs 6,500 in Blue and LeafGreen. Not every Pokemon is cheaper in Blue and LeafGreen, however. Dratini actually costs an extra 1,800 coins in these versions. Most of the non-Porygon Pokemon you can find in the Safari Zone, but the other noteworthy Pokemon here is Abra. It's cheap enough to get with just the coins you can find on the ground in the Game Corner, and you don't have to bother with trying to catch one in the wild if you get it here. Moving on to Gold, Silver, and Crystal, there are actually 2 Game Corners. One's in Johto in Goldenrod City, while the other is in Kanto in Celadon City. The 2 Game Corners share a number of similarities, the only big difference being the prizes available. Goldenrod, once again, has an easily obtainable Abra, along with a couple of other, less appealing Pokemon that vary based on what version you're playing. The TMs are all powerful, albeit expensive, being Fire Blast, Blizzard, and Thunder, although in Crystal specifically, once you've entered the Hall of Fame, an NPC will teach your Pokemon Flamethrower, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt for 4,000 coins a pop. That's still ludicrously expensive, and it's lame that it's locked behind the post-game, but I guess it kind of makes up for those moves not being TMs in Gen 2? Maybe? In Celadon, your prizes are a bit more appealing, including a level 40 Larvitar in Crystal specifically, although it costs a ridiculous 8,888 coins. As for the game part of the Game Corner, things have improved dramatically, as not only are the slot machines enhanced, but we also have a second game we can play. This new game is Card Flip. You pick between two cards and then try to guess not only the Pokemon, but also the level that's on the card you picked. You can make a specific guess for a higher payoff if you're right, or make a more general guess so that you're more likely to be right, but at the cost of a lower payoff. After 12 rounds, and therefore all 24 cards get used, the deck gets reset and shuffled, and you can continue playing. With the slot machines, the icons are much more clearly defined, making it easier to try and stop on the icon you want, like a 7. There are also a small handful of little events that can occur, the most common one being some golem dropping down and altering the third reel if the first two have 7s lined up. According to Bulbapedia, very rarely, a Chansey can appear and use Egg Bomb to force the third reel to land on a 7 if the other two reels have 7s, but I never got this to happen, which probably speaks to its rarity. On top of all this, each game corner has a slot machine that's guaranteed to be luckier than the other machines typically are. In Goldenrod, the lucky slot machine is this one, while in Celadon, the lucky machine is here. However, both of them are occupied unless you're playing during the morning hours, 4 to 10 AM. I played on the lucky machine in Goldenrod, and it took me about 10 minutes to get a 777. Your mileage may vary, of course, but that's better than any of my attempts in Gen 1. YouTuber Crystal has another video talking about the Gen 2 slot machine behavior. I'll link that in the description as well if you want to learn more about the Gen 2 slots. One last thing about the game corner in Gen 2 is that the dialogue of the NPCs in them is actually changed in the Australian version of Crystal. This is the first instance of some kind of censorship attempt on the game corner, although you're still able to play the games and get prizes just fine. Literally the only aspect that's changed is the dialogue. Everything else is the same as far as I can tell. In Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, our old friend the slot machines make a return, but instead of a card flipping game, we instead get a roulette table. Despite being a different game, the roulette table functions similarly to card flip. Place a bet on what Pokemon and or color the ball will land on. The more specific your bet, the higher your payoff if you get it right. Sometimes a ball might get stuck, and then a Pokemon will come get the ball out in some fashion, moving it a couple of spaces in the process. As for the slots, I'm gonna be honest, I got a headache trying to understand how they work, but I think I understand it now. Kind of. So first, when you press A in front of a machine and the slots appear, stop. The position the reels start at actually determines if you have a lucky machine or not. Each reel is just a loop of 21 images, and just out of sight of the starting positions of these reels is a straight line of 7s. If the 7s are blue, the machine will be lucky. If they're red, the machine will have normal luck. If you know this loop, or just look it up on Bulbapedia or something, or if you happen to catch which color the 7s are as soon as your first spin starts, you can immediately tell how lucky the machine you're playing at is. So what does luck do? Basically, it increases the odds of getting matches of 7s, matches of lightning bolts, and the chance to get real time, which is a special mode where you can earn a lot of coins, up to 660. This is the first instance of the slot machines in Pokemon having this bonus mode you can enter, and will return in some fashion in subsequent games. The thing with real time, however, is it kinda sucks. If you match 3 Pikachu silhouettes, a lightning bolt gets added to the top, which apparently increases the chance for you to get real-time bias, which is what triggers real-time. But I'm not seeing any data on how big of a boost it gives, or what your odds are when you have 16 lightning bolts at the top of the screen. It's certainly not 100% though, because I got 16 bolts in Ruby and Sapphire, and even after several more plays, I never got real-time. And even when you do get real-time, there's a chance it lasts for a whole 0 spins. This chance for real-time to do nothing is drastically increased if the player is playing on a lucky slot machine, due to an apparent oversight. So, ultimately, I think it's safe to say the slots are a bit of a bust, but hey, we still have the roulette tables. These are largely similar to card flip from Gen 2, except less. There are only 3 colors for each Pokemon instead of 6 levels, and the game gets reset after 6 rounds instead of 12. Like with card flip, this is the less risk, less reward, more consistent, and probably more fun option in the game corner. Although, your best option at the end of the day will probably still be just buying the coins you need for the prize you want. Speaking of which, the prizes this time around are the best yet. There's no Pokemon, but the TMs available for sale are fantastic moves, and also Double Team. The other vendor has dolls of the Hoenn starters, which, if you like secret bases, there you go. You also get a doll of your starter for free by talking to this NPC. For Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, we only have the slots this time around, but these are probably the best slot machines in the entire series. It's very easy to win coins on these, although the drawback is that, Jesus Christ, the prices of these TMs. You have the slots on the top screen, and then the bottom screen will change from just a scenic mountain view, to a Pokeball shaking, to a Clefairy appearing. In fact, what appears on the bottom screen is actually relevant to not only the bonus game, but whether or not you can actually win. See, if there's no Clefairy or Pokeball on the bottom screen, you'll never make a match. When a Pokeball is on the bottom screen, you're able to make a match of a particular icon based on what kind of Pokeball is shaking. When Clefairy pops out, then when you make a match of 3 sevens or 3 galactic symbols, the bonus game begins. The bonus game is pretty simple, it's just a game of Simon Says. Stop the slot that Clefairy is pointing to. However, if the moon on the bottom screen glows red, you don't want to follow Clefairy's orders, as that'll make the bonus game more likely to end. Conversely, if the moon glows white, you want to follow Clefairy's commands, as that'll guarantee the bonus game continues for another round. During the bonus game, if you stop the slots correctly, you're guaranteed to get a replay match, which gives you 15 coins instead of a free spin. This means it's really easy to get a bunch of coins, and it's not like it's even difficult to access the bonus game. It's surprisingly easy to match 3 sevens or 3 galactic symbols. Each round of the bonus game lasts for 15 spins, after which there's a chance Clefairy leaves and the bonus game ends. This chance is altered by a number of things, including whether the Clefairy is shiny, not shiny, or a transformed Ditto. Shiny Clefairy being the one most likely to continue the bonus game. If you can have a bonus game last for 10 or more rounds, you can talk to the lady at the counter to get the Explosion TM, which... cool, I guess. Now here's the thing, all of this doesn't apply if you're playing the Korean or European versions of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, because the slot machines were just flat out removed in these versions. Or, more accurately, they were still there, you just couldn't play them. Interacting with the machines would just result in the player possibly finding 5 to 20 leftover coins in each of the unoccupied machines, once per day. This is the only way to get coins in these versions, other than buying them, and the prizes still cost the exact same amount of coins as the Japanese and American versions. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time a Game Corner game was just flat out removed. The only other form of censorship prior was just some altered dialogue. HeartGold and SoulSilver possibly have the most drastic differences between versions yet, as every version of the game other than the Japanese version has a completely different game in the Game Corner, Voltorb Flip. The Japanese version still has a standard slot machine game, which is actually kind of interesting. On the bottom screen, you have the slots, and on the top, there's a Smeargle. If you make matches, Smeargle draws the icon you matched, and his mood gets better. If you don't make a match, he draws scribbles, and his mood worsens. If Smeargle's mood gets bad enough, the background of the top screen will change. It starts on green, which is just normal, but it can become blue, which makes it easier to get Pikachu and Meryl matches, or it can become red, which makes it easier to get matches of Pokeballs and Sevens. You don't need to have a red background to get matches of those, but when you do match either the Pokeballs or 777s, you enter a bonus game. The bonus game in this one is pretty simple. On the top screen, Smeargle will have one of the Johto starters drawn on the canvas, and you have to match that Pokemon on the slots. It sounds simple, but the timing can be a bit tricky. I personally find you want to stop the reel just a bit before you think you would want to stop it. You have the potential to get several hundred coins doing this, and once the bonus game is over, the slot machine is automatically put in a state where matches of 7s and Pokeballs are more likely, meaning it's easier to get back into the bonus game. As for Voltorb Flip, it's much more skill-based, but still has elements of luck thrown in. If you've ever played Picross or a Nonogram or any of the various other names those puzzles go by, Voltorb Flip is kind of similar to those, but instead of you always being able to solve a puzzle without the need for guessing, Voltorb Flip will eventually require guessing. Voltorb Flip features coin multipliers of 1 times, 2 times, and 3 times, the latter two being the only ones you actually need to flip over to win, as the goal is to flip over all the 2 times and 3 times multipliers. Of course, if you flip over a Voltorb, you lose, and get no coins that round. Each row and column shows the sum of the multipliers in that row or column, along with how many Voltorb there are. One hint is that, since the 1 times multipliers don't contribute to winning, once you're at a point where the only remaining spaces in a row or column are Voltorbs and 1s, you can safely ignore the rest of the spaces in that row or column and move on to another part of the board. The game includes a memo to let you make little markings on spaces to help you remember what you've deduced is on a particular space. I just always use the Voltorb marking because I only ever use the memo to remind me which squares contain a 1 or a Voltorb. There are calculators online to show you the best square to flip over, but really, I just wish the game didn't have any luck elements at all. The boards don't even need to make a picture like they do in Picross, just let games be winnable without luck. Having said all of that, however, I do enjoy Voltorb Flip. I'm not sure if it's my favorite Game Corner game, but I don't hate it either. Despite the luck elements, it still feels like a more surefire way to get coins than testing your luck with the slot machines, card flip, or the roulette tables. One last thing about Voltorb Flip is that, in the regions that have it instead of the slots, you can't buy coins. You have to play Voltorb Flip to get more coins, and it also costs nothing to play, unlike the slots. HeartGold and SoulSilver were the last Pokemon games to feature a playable Game Corner, but multiple generations that previously featured the Game Corner got remakes. So, what happened to the Game Corner in these games? Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, on top of featuring a completely different Mauville city, has an NPC standing in front of what appears to be a closed building, which turns out to be the Game Corner. Talking to him gets some neat dialogue, and you do get dolls of the starters, Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip, prizes that you could get in the GBA versions of these games. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee still have the Game Corner, on account of there being a Team Rocket hideout the player needs to clear out, but the player can't play any of the machines in the Game Corner itself. Some of the machines appear to be slots, but others contain references to things like Pokken Tournament, which is pretty neat. Most of the games are more arcade-like in nature based on their descriptions, which I think could be a neat way to revive the Game Corner in future games, have it host arcade-like minigames. As for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the Game Corner got completely remodeled and is instead a clothing store, letting the player buy additional outfits for the protagonist at somewhat outrageous prices. The building next door, where you'd redeem coins for prizes before, is now just a storage room with a couple of employees. So, what happened? Why did the Game Corner see the changes it saw? The easiest thing to point to is PEGI, a European equivalent to the ESRB, tightening down on depictions of gambling in video games and requiring a higher age rating for them. Interestingly, however, this didn't cause Nintendo and Game Freak to never bring back the Game Corner, as it made a return in the Virtual Console versions of the Generation 1 and 2 games. They just had a rating of 12 given to them by PEGI. And there you have it. That's more or less the history of Pokemon's Game Corner. If you learned something new or found this video interesting, please take a moment to let me know in the comments. I truly enjoy hearing from y'all. If you want to learn more weird Pokemon stuff, take a look at these videos on screen. And a big thanks to Mithril Monarch, along with the rest of my patrons on screen, for going the extra mile and financially supporting the channel. See you next time, everyone.